You eat today, you drink today, good. My name is Hyena Breezy, and I am here once again letting all of you know some lesser known Marvel characters who would make a perfect fit for Marvel Rivals. I did this before with lesser known X-Men characters who I felt would fit well into Marvel Vs Capcom. If you'd like to check that out, I'll go ahead and link it below. But this time we are going to be broadening the range to all of Marvel as a whole. This go around, we're going to be talking about 5 different characters, but if you want to hear me talk about more, you can go ahead and let me know in the comments, as well as like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it. First up on our list, we have a villain known as Ruby Thursday. Ruby Thursday is a mad scientist that for some reason doesn't understand why people don't want to undergo her mind-boggling surgery idea where she takes your head and replaces it with a piece of malleable, super transformative plastic that is powered by a supercomputer. So Ruby says since y'all are too smooth-brained to understand her genius, she goes ahead and does the surgery on herself. How exactly? I'm not sure, but she figures out how to do it. Being sick of closed-minded beauty standards, she opts to make her head just a simple ruby with the power of her new surgery. With this, she has made her transformation into a full-blown supervillain and goes on to join the villainous group known as the Headmen. One of the most lovably stupid supervillain groups to me, where all of them are mad scientists with some sort of power ability related to their head, as the name implies. She fits into the group by using her ruby head to shapeshift into literally anything. Wings, blades, a knife, giant lips, a gun, a boulder, you name it. Given that she can form her ruby into any shape she wants, I feel like she can fit into any role that is given, depending on what she forms it into. But I'm going to pick a Vanguard just because I think we need a little bit more variety in that area. Her primary fire could be short but wide-ranged, being able to turn into an array of different weapons, from swords to hammers to giant fists to you name it. She could have a rectangular shield to where she forms her head into 2 giant arms that cover her team, with an attack ability tied to it, where she can bring the arms in to do a clap motion. This is so you can deal with anybody trying to walk past the shield or trying to damage it. Next, she can have an ability where she'll form a lasso or tendrils that can pull in enemies that are trying to track down and take out all of the squishy characters like healers or DPS that are getting too far in. Since her goal in the comics was to give everyone this shapeshifting head ability, let's go ahead and let her do just that, where she can give her teammates that shapeshifting head that will allow them to gain shield passively. When Ruby does this, she will also gain shield herself, with the amount of shield growing depending on how many people she has given the ruby head to. Then for her ult, we can have Ruby jump up into the sky and lock on to enemies similar to McCree's Deadshot in Overwatch. Once it's fully activated, Ruby will shoot out ruby heads for all of the enemies to wear, but these will be different from the ones she gives her allies. These ones will cause enemies to be damaged and slowed for a set amount of time. And there you have Ruby Thursday, the villain on this list I was most excited to share. Now onto a hero, we have Slapstick. Slapstick is a rubber hose cartoon inspired hero with basically all the abilities of a Looney Tunes character. But first, he was just a simple high school prankster by the name of Steve Harmon. During a prank where Steve was dressed in a clown getup, he was pulled into an interdimensional portal by a bunch of evil alien clowns. Going through that portal ended up extremely altering his body into a mix of Peacock from Skullgirls and also allowing him to basically break the laws of physics with his body. Along with this, he has a form of hammer space in which he can store any item he wants into his glove, sort of like a bag of holding. And with the power of infinite bullshit, I feel like he would make the perfect duelist. For his primary fire, I'd give him one of those spring-loaded boxing glove guns that you'd see in one of those old gag shops. And for his alternate fire, I'd give him a small selection of pie bombs. For a special ability, he can throw a rubber chicken on the ground as a sort of hazard for people to slip up on. For the next ability, I want to take some inspiration from Street Fighter V with Akuma and his V-trigger version of his DP. With this, he is able to hit you going upwards as well as coming back down. So we could have Slapstick pull out a hammer, or better yet, pull out a Spider-Man plushie and do an uppercut motion with it, and then be able to slam them back down into the ground. And for his final ability, he can grab the sides of his pants and pull a classic cartoon move by not only pulling his pants up, but also his legs with it, extremely heightening them. With this, he can not only come eye to eye with flying characters, but he can also avoid damage on the lower half of his body. Now to end things off with his ult, we're gonna give him something that's sort of a mix between Jeff's and Storm's. Slapstick can pull out his hammer and start swinging it around until he turns into one of those classic cartoon dust ball fights. While the dust ball is going, different enemies that come in contact with it will be sucked in, and once the duration of the ult ends, all of the characters that were sucked up inside will be launched sporadically into different parts of the map. Now that we're all done with Slapstick, let's go ahead and go from a hammer to a sword with Excalibur. Known day by day as Faiza Hussein, Excalibur is a doctor from Great Britain. During a Skrull invasion of Earth, Faiza was on the streets taking care of people who were wounded in the attacks. Then out of nowhere, a Skrull laser hits her directly, not killing her, but giving her superpowers. As for those superpowers, for the JoJo heads, imagine a mix between Crazy Diamond and Nut King Cole. For everyone else, she has complete control of matter, being able to deconstruct and reconstruct things at her will, usually deconstructing and reconstructing people to heal them. Once her powers were discovered, she was invited to join MI13. In the most basic terms, MI13 is like S.H.I.E.L.D. but British, and includes people like Black Knight and Captain Britain. And if you're wondering where her name comes from, it's because of this sword right here that she wields. She was able to pull that from the stone because she is worthy, and that is because that is the actual Excalibur. Now getting to how she could play in game, I can see her being sort of a hybrid like Mr. Fantastic, where he is a tank and a DPS. I can see her being a mix between a DPS and a healer. But if I'm going to slot her into one specific role, it is going to be a strategist. For her primary fire, I would give her medium range energy burst from her sword Excalibur. For her main way of healing, I would give her a sort of resource like the Thorfor's and the one that Mantis has. With this, it would be an auto-tracking beam like Cloak's or Scarlet Witch's, but hers would be healing her allies instead of damaging enemies. And since her healing abilities are just a tad bit gruesome, I'd say the healing beam just gives a glowing x-ray of their skeleton, instead of actually ripping them apart. Looking at her special abilities, I would give her a sword slash barrage that could be linked to another ability. Once you do that sword slash barrage, you can choose to link it with a pushback that can get enemies off of your team, or you can choose not to do that to just let the sword slash go into a combo. Next ability, we have a diagonal sword slash wave that if it hits enemies, it will damage them, and if it hits allies, it will give them a small bit of shield. And for the last ability, we can have her raise her sword to the sky for it to shine, granting teammates that are close by a quick chunk of heals. And for her ult, we can have Excalibur, the lady, stab her sword Excalibur, the sword, into the ground, causing allies in a certain radius to be blessed by the sword Excalibur. Those who are blessed will be healed and also given a speed boost. Now to get another villain, we are going to visit the mutant side of Marvel with Emplate. Okay, real quick before we get into the rest of him, I'm a voice actor and I found out about this dude while making this list and I really wanted to voice him, so...
But before I go, understand this. After I have supped upon the marrow of others like yourselves, I will return. Know that wherever you go, I can see you. Wherever you run, I can follow. Wherever you hide, I can find you. And I will. Know that I will devour each and every one of you, one morsel at a time.
Okay, back to what you're here for. Emplate, aka Marius St. Croix, comes from Old Money in Monaco. He lived a rich and privileged lifestyle until the day that his mutant powers finally hit. He was cursed with the mutant power of having to feed on the bone marrow of other mutants in order to survive. Also, when he kills mutants through feeding, he is able to take their abilities from them. Once the X gene in his body started activating, he ended up killing his own mother, causing him to be casted out by his family. After a while of fending for himself and feeding on mutants and learning dark magic to survive, Emplate would return to his family and attempt to get his siblings to join his crusade, but they were not having it, so they sent him to a different dimension, but not before he turned one of his sisters into the creature known as Penance by using his powers on them. That's right, he can also turn people into evil minions by giving them abilities through his feeding. Bro is really all for one, before all for one. Eventually though, through sheer willpower, he is able to come back to his home dimension so he can terrorize the group known as Generation X. Now for his role in game, I am thinking about making him a Vanguard, with his primary fire being some claw strikes with those weird, creepy, spindly hands of his. For abilities though, I'm thinking of making him a more momentum-based character. With the more damage and more blocking you do, the stronger he will get. He could have two separate meters, one that builds with the damage he does, and one that builds with the damage he takes. As one meter is filled, he will get bigger and be able to do more damage. If he is able to fill both meters, he will get bigger again, along with having a bigger health bar. Along with these, he can have an ability where he shoots out the tongues from his hands to add some range to him. He can also have an ability where he does a spinning claw attack to deal with enemies that are trying to hound him all at the same time. And for the last one, he is able to phase in the comics due to his time in other dimensions, so I want to give him a phasing ability here, but when he uses it, it will cause his meters to go down. And for his ult, I kinda wanna have it be where he jumps from person to person to person, jumping on somebody to drain their life away before auto-locking to the next target to do the same to them. And the speed at which he can drain different characters to get the KO will go up depending on how many meters he has. If he has no meters filled, it'll take a second or two to take out an average health character, and if he has all meters filled, it'll take damn near an instant to take out a full health Vanguard. And that was Emplate, our final villain. Now to end things off in a more heroic way, I want to show you a character that you should know, but maybe not in this form. Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. That is right, this is Mary Jane Watson in her superhero persona known as Jackpot. I know all of you know the story of Mary Jane Watson, former actress, model, and longtime on-again, off-again love of Peter Parker, but how exactly did she get superpowers? Well, it's a little controversial because of the guy that gave them to her, Paul. I'm gonna be real with you, I don't have the time nor the want to go into everything about Paul, but if you want to learn more about him, go ahead and check out Alex Lennens' video on him. It's very well done, tons of views, goes into everything people hate about him. But Cliff Notes version, he is the man that Mary Jane was with and adopted kids with when she was not with Peter in that comic run. While him and Mary Jane were stuck in an alternate universe, Paul built a wrist-mounted gadget for her that would harness the power of said universe. This gadget works like a slot machine. When she activates it, 3 random glyphs will appear on the screen. If she hits a jackpot, she will temporarily be given a grandiose, super flashy, and strong random superpower, but if she doesn't, she'll get a random, middle-of-the-road, not the most useful, sorta underwhelming superpower. And for a wild-ass game like Marvel Rivals, I think adding an RNG character would be insanely stupid and dumb, and I love it and I want them to do it so bad. First, I see her being a duelist, with a sort of stock building mechanic. Outside of her primary fire, which would just be a bunch of punches and kicks, I would give her one ability, and only one. This ability will be Mary Jane activating her Jackpot Gauntlet to give her one random ability. She does not have to use it right away though, she can stock this ability to use for later, and once the cooldown resets on the main ability, she can stock another power. And I'd say let's give her 4 stocks to slot her abilities in. And for those random powers, let's go ahead and give her 6 of them, with 2 of them being jackpots. For those 4 non-jackpot ones, we can give her something like turning into a goo monster, where she'll splat into the ground and make sort of a snail trail as she moves. Anyone that steps into it will be damaged and maybe tripped up. Maybe she can shoot a hot molten lava rock from her mouth, giving her a sort of burst damage projectile. Maybe give her a swarm of bees that she could ride on to give her a movement boost, some flight, and be able to shoot them out at enemies. Hell, we can even use this to reference classic Spider-Man villains by having her grow a scorpion tail to reference, well, Scorpion. This could alter her primary melee attack to make it more powerful. For Jackpot's 2 Jackpot abilities, we could do something like have a bunch of lasers shoot from her body in random directions. This could work really well in really crowded team fights. The other one could be some sort of water manipulation where she summons giant water geysers to shoot up out of the ground. If an enemy was on the spot where it was summoned, they will be damaged and launched up. Then the geysers will stay there for a set amount of time as a way to shield your allies. Now for her ult, I am calling it Face It Tiger. MJ will hit a 3rd Jackpot, allowing her to turn into a giant spectral tiger monster for a select amount of time, allowing her to go ballistic and terrorize the enemy team. And there you have it, my list of 5 different lesser known Marvel characters that I think would make a great addition to Marvel Rivals. If you have any characters that you want to see added to Marvel Rivals, go ahead and leave a comment. If you want to see me talking about 5 more lesser known Marvel characters, go ahead and leave a comment. Or if I got any facts wrong about these characters, go ahead and leave a comment. Just try your best not to be an asshole about it, alright? As I said before, if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. You can also check me out on Blue Sky, and if you want to support me in other ways, you can check out my Ko-fi, as well as my website if you want to commission some art for me of your very own. And finally, with all that being said, I've been Hyena Breezy, I was here, and I did the best I can. Later.
I know that you'll be back.